In Isaiah 53:5-8, it states, "But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, and the chastisement of our peace was upon him. And by his stripes we are healed. All were like sheep who have gone astray. We have all turned every one to his own way, and the Lord was laid upon him, and iniquity was in all of us." I wanted to share this because that was by Isaiah, who was an Old Testament prophet who predicted the death and the death of Jesus Christ. The resurrection is another story. So we're coming upon Passover, April 12th to 20th of 2025. And it's maybe a little early right now to discuss this, but here in Luke 22, there's a discussion probably we should start having about what that looks like. And I'm going to open that up. I think if I can get to this. Let me see where I can find it real quick. But it all started in the Garden of Gethsemane. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus prayed before the real ugly things started to begin, Jesus, of course, spoke and healed a lot of people. His ministry was pretty much coming to an end at the Garden of Gethsemane because he prayed so much that he bled out of stress because he knew what his time was coming. And here we are at Luke 22, and the plot to kill Jesus was about to begin. And he was preparing for Passover with the disciples. And it was the Lord's first supper. And Jesus had discussed the end of the age that was coming. So, of course, there are a lot of things was predicted. Jesus predicted that Peter would deny him. And the trouble that Jesus spoke of was a future tense. But as he prayed in the garden, he also knew that Satan entered into Judas, and also knew that Peter would deny Jesus as well. This led to, and I'm on Luke 22. And as I'm flipping pages here, I'm just highlighting what happened as the events took place. Jesus faced the Sanhedrin, which was the rabbis and Sadducees, basically the Sanhedrin. If you don't know the Sanhedrin, please take the time to look it up. But the Sanhedrin, of course, are the elders who brought him, basically accused him of blasphemy. And then, of course, Jesus. They're the ones that originally ordered him to be crucified. And also the Jewish people of that time period also wanted him to be crucified as well. But it really led to what happened in front of Pilate. Because Jesus faced Pilate, and Pilate found no wrong in Jesus and wanted to set him free. But the people had exclaimed that they wanted to crucify him because they gave him a choice, and this is what's the choice. It was either Jesus or Barabbas. So after facing Herod and going back to Pilate, the decision was made to crucify Jesus. And that's when that's when Jesus crawled, barely made it up Calvary. And then Simon of Caesarion helped Jesus climb his way up to the cross. As Jesus was nailed after being beaten so badly, unrecognizable, he was nailed between two criminals on a cross. Now I'm going to read this part because I just gave you a footnote of what happened to Jesus, but I think it's important to know the death of Jesus. It was about noon in darkness over the whole land until 3, and the light had failed. The curtain of the sanctuary was split in the middle. And Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I entrust my spirit." Taking his last breath, the centurion saw what happened and began to glorify God and saying, "This man was righteous." All the crowds had gathered for the spectacle they saw that taken place and went home striking their chests. But all knew, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, stood in the distance watching these things. And then the burial began to bury Jesus as they pulled him off the cross. But they did not strike Jesus' knees. Usually that was a typical response in the crucifixion of Jesus, or anyone that would be crucified, to make sure they were dead. And also they did stab him in the chest to make sure the fluid came out of his chest, and the fluid did come out of his chest, and it poured out on a Roman soldier who literally was saved. I mean, I'm talking about a salvation experience by this experience that happened to him. So by the time they put the garments that wrapped him, and then the burial garments, that is, they didn't have time because it was it was not Passover alone, but it was also a Sabbath. So they didn't have time to put on the myrrh and all the incense to preserve his body. They were going to do it on a Sunday, which was not a Sabbath. So when Mary went to go to the tomb and the stone was unrolled. And an angel came to Mary and says, "He is not here. He has been risen." And that's the story that you need to know, that Jesus was resurrected on a Sunday morning, resurrection morning. Praise God.